imagine if everyone knew how to master their own energy and really control their own mindset and do it in a way that allows you to challenge systems and create your own beliefs about the world and how you want to live and not rely on other people to tell us that. We don't learn how to do that. But I really believe through my own experience and what I've studied from people who have quote unquote made it, you know, that's what they were able to do.
Hey you, welcome to Shades of Content, a show that teaches entrepreneurs how to effectively use content to market their business and stay content while doing it. I'm your host, Patrice, a wife, a mom of 3, and a 15-year public relations and marketing professional who decided to open a brick and mortar content studio 4 years ago. And I honestly haven't looked back since. Join me as I share my experiences and the experiences of other entrepreneurs who, like me, are navigating this maze of owning a business, running a family, and trying to stay sane and healthy while doing it. I'll tell you, it's an amazingly challenging journey, but I honestly wouldn't have it any other way. See you soon. This episode is brought to you by Square One. You guys, we're in a new year, and if you're still using these old, archaic systems for managing your business's finances and doing payment processing, I need you to switch it up now, and I need you to switch it up to Square. I've been using Square Up for almost 5 years since I opened the business, and it is the only platform that I trust with taking payments from my customers, tracking payments, sending, creating, tracking invoices. I also use it to send text messages and emails to customers. Square Up is really an all-encompassing platform that not only allows you to track your business, track your sales, track your money, but also allows you to keep great relationships with your customers. So if you know that it's time to switch up or just step into using a much better payment processor, then I just think you should try Square. There's a link in the show notes, and if you sign up using that link, you can get one of 2 perks. You can either have free processing for a certain amount of time, which means they're not going to charge you a percentage. I think it's up to $1,000, or you can get $20 off this amazing Square reader. I use this when I'm doing on-site bookings. It's really great. It's really handy. And listen, we need as many ways as possible to get our money. So tap the link in the show notes and get situated with Square ASAP.
Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome back to another episode of Shades of Content, the show that teaches Black millennial mompreneurs easy hacks to make their content marketing, just easier, better, all the things, because life be busy. But then also focuses on finding contentment, right? Because when you wear all these hats, when you're trying to figure out how to market your business, when you're taking care of children, when you're deciding to step into your voice, like it can kind of make you feel like you're a little crazy sometimes. And so there has to be some type of intentional plan and focus on finding those places of peaceful happiness, even when things are wild, right? Because life is going to get wild, and we have to know what it takes for us to tap into being content. If you're hearing this, you probably saw, I recently posted a reel on Instagram, and it was just like, what is something you wish people knew? Contentment and being complacent are 2 different things. And I literally was having a conversation with my husband the other day, and I said content, and he took it as, what you mean content? What are you giving up? Or you just taking it as it comes? I was like, that's not the definition of content, friend. And then we Googled it and looked it up, because one thing I know is my words. If I'm going to use it, I'm going to know what I'm saying. And content is a state of peaceful happiness. Complacent is when you come to a place where you are just like, it's all good. I've done what I can, 2 different things. If you're watching the show or listening to the show, we want to pick the former. We want to be content. We're not going to be complacent. So with that, if you haven't rated or reviewed the show, please do that. Let me know what you think. Tap in on social. We're going to get right into this episode. I have a beautiful guest with me, beautiful inside and out. All of my guests are that way, right? Like I have amazing people that I sit with and talk to on a weekly basis. And this is Tiffany Lauren Jones. Hey, girl.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, my God. I'm going to give y'all a little background, because typically I always have people also on the show that there's like a connection. So I'm on an email list for a very strategic marketer, And I love the work that this marketer does. And so I reached out and I did an inquiry call. And Tiffany was the person that I did the sales call with. And we talked. I don't know if we realized we were sorors on that call.
I don't think so, but I can't remember.
Okay.
Yeah.
We just had a really good call. I ended up not moving forward, but it was an amazing service. And you were able to package it and sell it it worked. It just wasn't the right time for me. Mm-hmm. Fast forward. I'm trying to think exactly what caused me. I know what. I was sitting right here in my studio camp. I had just finished a live coaching session. I've talked about this on the show before with David Shands and Donnie Wiggins of the Social Proof podcast. They have a show called the Brain Picker podcast where you pay. At that point, it was $3,000, and they do live coaching. So there's an hour, and they coach you live on YouTube with all of their viewers. They have a huge following. So not only was I getting this coaching from them, but their viewers were tapped in and gave me, like, I don't know if you noticed, but like CAMP, the acronym is Content and Media Production. I got that from somebody that was watching. And it was like, duh, how did I not think of that for 4 years? But thank God that I was on that coaching call because it all makes sense. Anyway, had that coaching session. From that coaching session, it was so much info. I was like, okay, when I get home, I'm going to take an edible and I'm going to just write down all my thoughts. That's what happened. Went home, was super zen. And I was like, who can help me get here? I think I might have searched somebody else's page came up that I've worked with before, a young lady who's also in the marketing space. And she had posted Tiffany. And I was like, that looks like the same person that I had that call for. And I'm a little high at this point. So I'm like, right?
Like,
but,
is it me?
Is it me or what's happening here? Mm-hmm. So then, and I have my passion. I don't have the planner here, but I just was writing all this stuff. It was very Rain Man-y. And so then I reached out and I guess we had a discussion. I don't remember all the details, but long story short, we ended up having an alignment a VIP like alignment day.
Mm-hmm. In person.
I'd never done this before, right? You guys see often like these VIP sessions. This is what that was. This was my first time doing it. It was a huge investment in myself. Mm-hmm. And that was when I feel like the world kind of opened up. And so we'll get into that a little later, yes. Right? But that was a long introduction. My bad. I had to give y'all some background because everything, when it's all connected. It's all connected. Mm-hmm. So welcome, Tiffany. Hi. Hi.
Hello.
Tell us, who is Tiffany right now?
Ooh, good question. Mm-hmm. So Tiffany right now is in transition. I am currently on the next level of my own alignment journey, and we can get into what that means and what that's been like. But I am going back into the core of who I am. And so I'm the same that I've always been, but in a new and different way. And I feel like I've finally reached that higher version of myself that I've been working towards. Yeah. But now learning how to integrate and actually be her and accept her. And so that means a lot of change and a lot of transition and a lot of acceptance and receiving, which has been more challenging than I realized, because you always think when I reach this level of myself, when I get to that version of myself, everything's going to be easy. Mm-hmm. But it's not as easy to be fully you in that new way when you haven't been doing that.
I would imagine that being the real you is probably a lot harder, because I do believe we live in a world where we're taught what we're supposed to do and who we're supposed to be. So when you go against that, it's in direct opposition of what we're taught. We're told by the powers that be what's supposed to happen. Yeah. I would love for our viewers to take us on this like memory lane. Where are you from? Where'd you go to college? Like, so Tiffany is an alignment. What is your official, like, what do you call yourself?
It's so interesting that you asked that, because that has been a part of the journey. Okay. So human design consulting is where I'm transitioning to. You have experienced my work, so you know that it's more than that.
Yeah.
I'm doing it for business owners specifically,
Right.
but there's also a huge spiritual element to what I'm doing. I get energetic downloads that I write, and that's how I get the information that I receive. That's how I get it out, and I translate that through my work. So I haven't found one specific name for that, because how do you explain what God is telling you to do and put a title on it?
My God.
It doesn't fit into a box. So human design consulting is what we're calling it right now, but it involves writing, it involves creating, it involves strategy, there's business to it, but there's also a spiritual element to it as well. And human design is a specific strategy for understanding the energy of the body, but I like to call myself an energy conductor because I'm really great at transmuting energy, receiving it, but then transmuting it in a way where I can share healing energy through writing.
Yeah.
And so, what do you call that?
What do you call that?
I don't know yet.
I don't know. I don't know if, like you said, how do you put a title on what God gives you? Because like we call God because that's like the one word that we can really quickly say, but it's all encompassing. There's no way we can say all the things.
Exactly.
Did you always have this like energy pull? Did you feel these things? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like this is
like when did this start, and like how did I get here?
I don't even want to say it's like high level conversation, because it's actually pretty low is not the right word. It's so connected. It's like just like connection conversation.
Yeah.
People don't be talking about this kind of stuff. I feel like,
no, especially not as it relates to business.
Yeah.
Especially not as it relates to business. But what I'm learning is that more people are on this journey than we realize, but there is a stigma, I feel, talking about it, because how do you know what someone is saying is true? It's such a personal experience. I don't even always know how to explain what I experience and how I do the work that I do. It just happens. So I'm learning it. But what I'm realizing is that more people, like I said, are on this journey than we realize. There's also a really dark side to your spiritual journey. It's not easy. It can be very ugly. And there's a lot of grief and loss that comes with elevation that I feel like we don't really talk about. And so people don't always want to share the times when they're, feeling a lot of doubt or really afraid about the direction they're going in, or not knowing what they're doing, or not making money currently. Even though God is telling you to do something, you don't always have the material abundance to reflect that. And we live in a society where those are the things that tell us whether or not we're successful, and that's not true. And so I'm really passionate about sharing more of the realities of what it means to step into a higher version of yourself, but also elevate your life, elevate your business, because I'm really big into research and studying, especially millionaires and billionaires, the journey that they've been on. How did they get there, and what do they know that we don't know?
Right.
And they all are very heavily focused on spirituality, mindset, meditation. They have learned the power of harnessing their own energy. And as I learn more about that and study that, I really feel like it's the true key to success. But the journey to get there requires a lot of deconditioning of the mind. And that is where the journey can be challenging, because how do you rewire your own brain to adopt new beliefs that are very different from what you were taught, what you see around you, and what society tells you should be doing, who you should be, or how you should show up. So you have to get comfortable being really uncomfortable and sometimes isolated
and being looked at as like I've had.
Yeah, people think you're crazy.
People think you're crazy. They think
you're crazy.
I had it, and this is not a conversation about marriage. This is literally I'm just picking this very Christian construct that we are fed. Like there is no other way. And so I was just like, I don't understand why this is the only way, and why every contract that we're in, we have to renew it after a couple of years. We have to actually look at the paperwork and say, do we want to do this or do we not? Every other agreement except for the agreement of like two people. And that's just wild to me. And so I said that to somebody, and the nasty look that I was given by saying it, and I wasn't saying I was against it. I was just like, has anybody ever thought to question this? And maybe the divorce rates are so high because this might not be the best construct, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe this isn't working. Mm-hmm. And it just was such a nasty look. And then it went from, well, you don't even have to, then it was like an attack. And it was like, yo, I just asked the question. Because it's trying to have a conversation.
Yeah, it challenges people's own beliefs. Yes. And it's a scary place to realize that maybe what you believe is not accurate. Or not the total truth.
Not the total truth. So
people can get defensive. I mean, but you can also, you have that experience with yourself too.
Absolutely.
Where it's like, am I losing it?
Yep.
Like, I always thought it was A, and I'm learning that it could be B or C or D. Yeah. And I feel like the journey to aligning with your higher self, your ideal self, whatever you want to call it, elevating and growing and learning and getting better, you have to go on that own journey with yourself. But it's challenging when you're already battling your own beliefs, and then you have other people who may feel discomfort with you challenging ideas too.
Ooh, discomfort. Nobody wants to feel discomfort. As you're at this point of designing your own human existence, has that always been something you've been focused on? Were there certain experiences that kind of were light bulbs in your life that you were like, wait a minute. Like, how does this Tiffany, how do you become this Tiffany?
Yeah.
Because you seem to, even though like it was like, how do you explain it? It seems like it seems very specific right? Like who you are.
It is, but I think what I am still deciding how I feel about it is putting a title on something that's so massive. It's like the title, it just leaves out so much, but that's something that I think can be explained through conversation. And so to answer some of your other questions too, I'm originally from Richmond, Virginia. Okay. I moved a bit growing up. My mom went back to undergrad and law school when I was younger, starting in 3rd grade. So I watched her go on her own journey through alignment and just watch her elevate herself, but be along for that ride. And so with that, I feel like I had a really early example of what it looks like to follow your dreams. It just was ingrained in me, I think, from a young age. Both of my parents always told me, like, you can do and be whatever. So I've always had a very large imagination. I always believed that anything you wanted to be or anything you wanted to do, you could do it. And I didn't really believe in obstacles. Right. I didn't believe, it's like anything somebody would say why they couldn't do something, I'm like, that doesn't matter. You want to go to the moon? Why not? Like, let's build a spaceship. So I always was also very interested in like magic and like different realities and that type of thing. And so when I went to college, I went to VCU in Richmond. I went to the School of the Arts and I studied fashion design and merchandising. And so I started my career, my background's in product development for apparel. I worked for Sarah Blakely at Spanx. Wow. That's really the only job that I had. I worked
quite a job.
Yes, it was quite the job. So I started working there when I was 22 and I left around 27, something like that. So I spent most of my, early adult life working in an environment that was led by someone who also believed in this magical world. She's huge on manifestation and creating your own reality. And when she shares her story, she talks a lot about how she essentially manifested that business and what that journey was like. And so that just solidified my belief. It was like, if you can do it, why can't I do something like that for myself? But in my corporate life, I always felt this pull. That's really when it started. I always knew that I was supposed to have my own business, but I was very much in the world of, it's going to be an apparel line. And then I realized, like, I don't really care about clothes that much. It's not that deep. Like, there are people that don't have access to that. And so I wanted to be committed to a mission that I felt was impactful in a different way for me. And the roles that I held in apparel, to me, didn't allow me to have that impact. And so I had a huge tug to leave that job for a very long time. But on paper, it's like, are you insane? Do you know how many people want to work here? How hard it was to get this job? Yes. How long you've been here? Yeah. On paper, I had all these material things. I had purchased a home. I had my dream car, all these things at the time. And I felt crazy for wanting to give all of it up. And so I didn't. I ignored that call for 3 years. God kept telling me, like, you need to quit, you need to leave, you need to do this. So I started a side hustle doing fun things like video and photography, and I loved it. It was my creative outlet, but I was still really miserable at work. And it got to the point where I didn't even want to get dressed in the morning. I literally moved. I purchased my condo like next door to my office so that I could walk to work, and was still showing up late. And that's how I knew, because that's not me.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you just don't want to go, girl. You just have to do something else.
And it wasn't, and I would be safe to say, I feel like it wasn't the company. Because a lot of times it's like, I think we think it's the job. We're blaming it on everything else. But it's you. Like, you have an internal, it's
time to go.
It's time to go.
So it got to the point where I wasn't recognizing myself. I was like, this is not me. I'm not the person who doesn't want to get up and get dressed. I'm not the person who is struggling to be on time for work, you know? I'd seen that transition, and it was just a struggle to be there all day. I was like, I just don't want to be here. And so I made the decision to sell my place, pack up all my stuff, quit the job, and it all happened in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
I put my house on the market. I had an offer, and it was sold, and it all happened in literally 4 weeks. So I didn't even have a full 2 weeks notice because I wasn't expecting my place to sell that quickly. But to me, that was a sign that it was meant to happen. Let's go. So it was probably about a week and a half where I was like, oh my gosh, I really have to be out of this place, like ASAP. And where am I going? Where am I going? Where am I going? So that was the beginning of what I call like a spiritual awakening, where it's like, okay, I'm listening to you, God. I don't know what the plan is. I had no plan. I sold 80% of my belongings. I only kept things that were sentimental or I felt held a high value that I wouldn't want to pay for again. I put it in a storage unit, and I went to my mom's place in Virginia. I decided to travel and essentially take a year off and figure out what my business would look like, but really just have time to exist for once and not think about work or money, to be honest. You know, I was very fortunate to have that time where, because of the sale of my home, I think that's important to share, because a lot of people ask, like, how did you do that? Did you just come from that type of life? And no, I think when you are operating on a path of alignment, things come to you to help you go on the journey. Because if you had told me that I would ever be able to have that type of experience, I would have been like, how? Where is that coming from?
And it was so easily, it was right there.
It was right there. So
when you went home, did your mom, like, someone who you saw achieve her dreams in law school with a child, and when you made the shift, did she get it?
She got it in the sense of, she was like, you should do whatever you want to do. Like, we support you. They know that I'm usually, a little bit more type A and a planner, and very much like, here's the plan, here's the strategy. A is going to be B and it's going to equal C, and we're going to do that. And so for me to feel so passionately about going on this journey, she knew that it meant something more, and she trusted that. But it's interesting that you asked that too, because it wasn't until really this weekend my mom came to visit that she was telling me she had similar visions like I'm having now about my journey. And I was like, how come you never told me that before? And she said, because timing. She said it didn't come out until just now. She hadn't thought about it. But that blows my mind, because I'm like, watching her go on her journey and knowing that I'm on a similar path but in a different way is mind-blowing, because I think it really happens to all of us, but recognizing the signs of when you're being called to do something isn't easy, especially when you're distracted. There's so many reasons to ignore it, so much noise. Wow. So I went on that journey. My plan was, I was like, I'm going to New York and I'm going to get another job in apparel. And God was like, no, you're not.
Where'd you travel?
No, you're not. I went to Bali. So I'd always wanted to go to Bali. Yes, I booked a ticket 2 weeks before I left, which was not planned. But I was like, when else am I going to be husband free, child free, job free, responsibility free at this age and be able to go travel. So I was like, screw it. I'm doing it now. I'm going to go. My parents were freaking out because they're like, you're going where? By yourself? For how long? So I went to Bali for 2 weeks, and that was a whole amazing experience in itself. And it really opened my eyes to what I feel, how I feel we are all meant to live, which was, blissful.
Right.
I really believe that everything that we need is already here on earth. The food, being able to build shelter from the resources that are here, so many things. And not being worried about a job or, it's a luxury. And I really feel like it shouldn't be. Right. That's a whole other topic.
Yes. Oh, Lord.
But it was the first time in my life where I feel like I was able to experience what it's like to just be me without worrying about anything else. And like most people we don't get to experience that.
You don't like unheard of.
Yeah.
I would imagine there's some people listening right now like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I have to worry about all this stuff.
Yes, we're always thinking about really how to make more money. Our lives revolve around surviving and how to, making sure that we all have what we need. And so to be able to do something like that was a huge blessing. But then I feel like all hell broke loose. Like spiritually.
It got dark.
It got very dark very fast, because when you're still, you have time to think and you have time to process, and all the things that you haven't dealt with start to come up. And you really have a clear view of the reality of where you are, how you think, who's around you, what needs to stay, what needs to go. And that's when the process of alignment really starts, because you have to be really honest about your relationships, what experiences you've had, whether it's trauma or, great experiences too, but how did you become the version of yourself that you are now? And who do you want to be? And what's the gap between the two? And how do you bridge that? And that shit's hard.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can cuss, but
I think, you can curse. We curse over here.
It's really hard.
It is. And like when you're thinking about it's who do you want to be? What does your life look like? And where are you now? And understanding it is possible. You gotta know that first. Which is why our time together was so, that VIP day was so eye-opening for me. Because like I always knew, like I've like you, very imaginative as a child, real clear. Like I would be in the shower, like acting like someone was interviewing me. Yeah, like I would be like, like literally interviewing myself while I'm getting dressed as a 9th grader.
Wow.
So I always like knew who I was. And my mom, I never forget one time she said to me, I just never felt like I gave you enough. And that kind of broke my heart a little bit, because I'm a great mom. But that was really just me knowing exactly what I wanted and not settling for anything else as a youngster. But then you grow up and you have all these responsibilities and you have kids, and you start to very slowly lose all of those ideas that you had of who you were and who you are. And so our conversation, you asked me questions that just helped uncover things that I already knew, but just didn't have the opportunity to say.
Yeah.
What do you want your week to look like? What does a perfect 24 hours look like? Like wildest dreams, what do you see? And as I'm saying these things, it's like, it's not that wild.
No.
And then you helped me put together literally, just do this. I was like, are you kidding me?
It's so much easier for someone else to be able to look at it, because when you're in it, you have the emotions and you have the thoughts and you have the beliefs of like, does this make sense? And what happens if it doesn't work? And just, am I crazy? Am I going crazy? All of these things that come up, and it can be really confusing and just bring up a lot of like doubt about what you're doing. But I truly believe that whatever you're meant to do, it's already within you. It already exists. You don't have to. Sometimes it just need other people around you to help you pull it out. Right. Even me, I do this work. And this weekend, my mom had to talk me through some things. Some of my girlfriends had to talk me through some things, because I had that moment where I was like, what am I doing? Where am I? Does this make sense? What am I doing all of this for? Because there are moments in your time of transition where it's almost like a void, like an in-between of where you were and where you're going. Yep. And when nothing's happening and you're used to that momentum, because there is a time where I feel like it's changing rapidly and you get the signs and you're like, I'm doing it. And I had this idea and then I got this opportunity and it all makes sense and it all connects. But then there are also times when you're called to rest or reflect, or periods of refinement, I like to call them, where nothing's happening. And so you start wondering, okay, is it over? Did I just imagine this direction? Am I still going the right way?
Is this where I'm supposed to be?
Yeah.
It gets real crazy.
Did I mess up? Am I supposed to be here? Like, what's happening? Why is nothing happening? Yeah. And that's where your faith is really tested. And you have to, I have to dig deep and go back to my practices and make sure that I'm, staying in faith. And I don't mean that in a religious way, but just believing in yourself and believing in the vision that you had and the work that you're doing. And knowing that there are seasons for your alignment. And like we were talking about earlier, each level looks different. So I like to think of life as a video game, and you get stronger and you level up, but each level has different challenges, and it does in some ways get more difficult because you have bigger experiences, I would say. So everything starts getting magnified, and if you've never been on a certain level before, you don't always know the rules or how to play it, but you have to practice and figure it out. And that can be scary. So it's like, I haven't been on this level. I don't know the rules.
A new level. We passed the Mario in the ocean. Exactly. We in the fire. Like that level was crazy.
Yep. And then the monsters start coming out, and it's like, oh my, what do I do with that?
I found myself saying a lot, new levels, new devils. I got to figure out another way to say that because I don't like the devil part. So I'm sure there's another way to say this, but that has been happening. I've been saying that to myself a lot, and just in my own personal life. I've had a few family members like ask me for money, and at first I was like, why are they asking me? Like what? Like, and then I had to come on, baby, like. Restructure that. Number one, be thankful that you have resources. And for some reason, these individuals see you as someone that can help, right? That's not really a bad thing. But if it starts to elicit these, it's because I am doing something right? There's something that is giving off this energy of success, support, help. That's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
And if and as you're reaching these levels, uncomfortable feelings are coming to the surface, talk about it, right? So one of those family members, I had to say, I love you, but it concerns me, or it makes me feel uncomfortable when you only talk to me in this way, right? That's an opportunity for a conversation because you're still human. You should still be able to say how you feel. So that's just like that example popped into my head because I'm like, oh, I guess I'm like growing up a little bit and I'm starting to shift. And that's in alignment with who I want to be. I want to be somebody who provides support. Like I've always wanted, and I might have said this in our session, every Christmas, I want to give my little cousins $1,000. Like, I want to pay for my cousins to go to school. Yeah. Right? Because they might not have the immediate resources to make it happen in a carefree way. That's something I want to do. And actually, when you look about being asked for help monetarily, maybe that's like, maybe I'm getting there, at some point that larger vision of being able to help my cousins financially. This is just one step to that, Yeah. I don't know, a little rant.
Hey there. Are you a content mompreneur? Or better yet, are you a content mompreneur? What does that mean? That means you're a mom who owns a business and is on a journey to seek contentment in your professional and personal life. If that fits you, because that is definitely me, then you need to get your Content Mompreneur checklist. Tap the link in the show notes to see exactly where you are in your journey of contentment. It's something that I am just really starting to hone in on and focus on, because the bottom line is we have to be able to find that level of peaceful satisfaction peaceful happiness through all of our life changes. And I'm on a journey to find that for myself, and I actually want to help you find it too. So tap the link in the show notes to take your Content Mompreneur checklist, and then shoot me an email or a DM to let me know where you stand in all of that. Here's the rest of the episode.
Sharing a story.
Yes, there we go.
Yes.
See, retraining. The mind is, I'm sure you've read. Have you read The Secret?
Oh yeah. So oh my gosh, we could have a whole episode talking about the books that I read and just the places that I went on the internet to find information that I really feel we should be learning in school, but obviously we can imagine why we don't. Because imagine if everyone knew how to master their own energy and really control their own mindset and do it in a way that allows you to challenge systems and create your own beliefs about the world and how you want to live, and not rely on other people to tell us that. We don't learn how to do that. But I really believe through my own experience and what I've studied from people who have quote unquote made it, that's what they were able to do. But it just, so I read The Secret. Neville Goddard is another person that I listen to quite a bit. There are a lot of people that really helped along my journey. The Four Agreements was another great book. God. The Alchemist was the first book that I read.
I haven't read that. That has
to read
soon.
The Alchemist.
Okay.
That book was presented to me many times along my journey, and I like to take notes in my phone. And sometimes when I'm feeling like I'm second guessing myself, I like to go back and look at all the notes that I've taken. I'm like, first of all, look how far you've come. Remember where you started. Also, all the signs are always there. So The Alchemist was presented to me in like 2014. Wow. I didn't read it until I had quit my job and I had moved back home for that year. Someone mentioned it to me again. I think it was the same friend actually. And so here we are, I don't know, 3 or 4 years later, and I'm like, okay, let me finally read it. But it really talks about this journey of, following your dreams and what it means and how it's not always easy, and you learn a lot along the way.
Yeah, you mentioned a good point about that friend that told you about the book. I just finished Hero on a Mission. I did an episode on it, and it was saying and I've talked about it on the show, right? Like our lives are a story. And in every part of our life, in every story, there's your hero, there's your villain, there's your guide. I forget the other one, but that person, you're typically the hero. At some point you're going to be the hero, but the person that gave you the book was the guide. There has to be every person in the story for the story to come to full, to see it out. And then once it comes to the finale, then another mission starts, another story starts,
and other guides along the way.
Exactly. And then other heroes and other villains. Sometimes we're the villain, but you have to your eyes have to be open to see it. I literally was just having a conversation last night with a friend of mine. We're the same age. Our oldest are the same age. She has 3 little ones. I have 2 little ones. She's working a full-time job. She has a business, we're in the same world. And she was saying how, she has to give herself a pep talk every morning to get up because it's just heavy. And when you're in this space of having all these kids and doing all the things, not even if you have kids or not, but it's just a lot. How do you get quiet? How do you even have a second to think about what your divine life can look like? Right? Thankfully I know you and we had that conversation. But everybody can't sit with you for 8 hours. And so are there practical things that busy mompreneurs who want peaceful happiness but own businesses and
Yes.
Are there things that we can do, and what?
So I'm going to share a tip that I recommended to one of my line sisters. She's a mom, busy, she works full time, and she has gone on business endeavors. And one recommendation that I made to her, she was like, I don't have the time. My days are packed. I don't know when this could happen. And I said, well, how much of your budget because money came up as well, where she was like, I can't afford to do these things.
Right.
I can't afford to, have a nanny, for example. Right. And so I said, well, what would it look like and how much would it cost if you paid a babysitter for 2 hours on a Saturday morning, and then that's your time to go think and be and do whatever you feel called to do to get in touch with yourself. For me, meditation helps a lot, right. Things like yoga, quiet time. But I want to make it clear that doesn't have to be your journey. Some people are like, I don't want to sit down and meditate. That sounds awful. Right. So some people it's walking, some people it's the gym or cooking, whatever it is for you. And so she tried that, and it was a great compromise because she found out it was only maybe like, an extra $100 that we probably spend on eating out or things like that, for her to have that time. And she was like, it was life-changing. And she tells me that she never even thought that was available to her because she's a mom. She didn't even think that she had the option to do something like that. So you can find small ways to integrate time in. I think you can decide, first of all, what that looks like for you, whether it's after work or on the weekends. I find weekends are probably better, but what does it look like to carve out, maybe it's even an hour or two where you know that your children are taken care of. Maybe you can hire a babysitter or a family member or a friend who can just give you that alone time.
Or their dad.
Or their dad, yes.
That's a whole nother conversation.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, we have to rely on our community.
Yes.
Like mindset. Be thinking they're not gonna watch. I can't afford. I don't have time. The things, right? And it's like, well, why? Do you know that to be true? Have you asked? We psych ourselves out before we even make the ask.
Yes. That goes back to the mindset thing too, because when you have to be careful who you share your dreams with. You always hear that, you don't really understand what it means, because it's really about protecting your mind.
That's it.
Because until you get super solid in doing that, and I'm still working on that, I think it's a lifelong journey to really master your own energy, but it can be really altering to the work that you're doing on your own mind if someone makes a comment like, well, where are your kids? Or why aren't you with them right now? Or why are you taking this time? Like, shouldn't you be doing something else? That one comment coming from a person whose opinion you really value could be enough to derail you. Yeah. And so that is what I feel like it really means when they say be careful who you share your news with, because it's not that you don't want to share and you don't want to be excited, but you need to make sure what you're doing is in a place where you're not going to give up on it if someone makes a comment that makes you second guess what you're doing until you really solidify that foundation, your confidence in the direction that you're going in. And that takes time. So that can be where the isolation comes in too, of what you want to do, because sometimes you have to keep it to yourself a little bit, unless you're talking to someone who is going to support you 10,000%.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I've, watched as we became friends, like, like I'm really proud of you. You've now taken your work, right? So working with entrepreneurs, but also you've now taken it, like you have a podcast now, right? So
thank you.
Hearing you, if you guys hear, like, her voice is very calming, and like when she enters, just like this is very peaceful energy that surrounds you. And so
I was not always here, by the way. I was not always here.
It's a process. Bottling that up and putting it into your show, which, I think when people decide, I don't know, personally, I don't know if it's harder to get in front of a camera or to like hear. I don't know. Nowadays you do both. Like people
sometimes both.
Right now you're doing both. But to like actually, things have to be real quiet to be able to hear something, right? You can have the TV on and you can just see some figments, but when you're in a car or when you're in a space and it's just audio, it got to be quiet, right? And so here we go again with this idea of the value of silence and why maybe having audio, maybe, and I'm sure there's studies that show this or prove or disprove it, but why the audio experience may be more valuable, right? But you deciding to have this show, what did that process look like? And then also tell us about the show.
Yes, so I started Alignment Recess is the name of the podcast, and it's really about taking a break from your everyday life. I wanted to have small ways for people to start going on their own journey or really integrate my experience and what I'm sharing with their own. I'm really passionate about making sure that I'm sharing tools and resources, but not necessarily telling people what they have to do, because I think everybody's journey looks different. But the podcast shares meditations, it shares affirmations, and I want to share more about what it means to essentially rewire your own mind. So when I've studied the science of that, there's a lot of nervous system regulation that happens when you're healing. A lot of the clients that I work with are Black and brown men and women, and we have a lot of trauma sometimes that we are experiencing. So it's not as simple as saying, I'm going to just change my mind and I'm going to start thinking differently. There is a level of healing that has to happen in your body, not only on an energetic level, but, you know, mentally, physically, spiritually, everything. So somatic nervous healing is something that, nervous system healing is something that I want to share more about on the podcast and have experts come on, doctors, scientists, to talk about the impact of learning certain mindsets and then what it means to transition into the mindset that's required to be the version of yourself that you want to be, because they're usually different. And there's a level of, like I said, healing that has to happen within your own body and your mind that has scientific backing. So meditation, for example, it's not as simple as just, it's more than just sitting down and, you know, closing your eyes and being silent. There's something that's happening to your body when you're calming your nervous system, and what that means for your mind and your brain and the muscles in your body and all of that. It's all connected. And so Alignment Recess is a very tiny piece of that. The episodes are usually 15 minutes or less to begin with, because you also don't have to start huge. You can start very small. And 5 minutes of your day, a quick recess from a busy day, can really have a large impact over time in supporting you in the direction that you want to go, and giving you those 5 minutes to just think about, how am I just feeling right now in this moment? Sometimes we go days without even acknowledging ourselves and acknowledging what's happening with us, because we're just going from one thing to the next, especially if you're a mom, you know? And so I think it's really important, even if it's just 5 minutes a day, to take time to sit with yourself, check in with yourself, and say, you know, how am I doing and how am I feeling?
And it's not selfish.
No, it's not selfish. It's like necessary.
You know, it's necessary. You were you before kids. Like you are, you know, you more than anybody else. And there's this shift that happens once you become a mom, or once you birth a business, right? That it's all about that thing or that human, or even once you get married. And we kind of shunned when we say, no, I matter. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna get away. I'm gonna like, no, I'm good. You're kind of looked at like, oh, I'm thankful that things are starting to shift. I think the world, or whatever we want to call it, is starting to recognize the side effects of not acknowledging your own needs and your own path and your own solo time. Like we're seeing how crazy it can get when people ignore the one being that they've known all their lives, right? That they used to pay attention to. When we're kids, when we can pay attention to ourselves, and then life happens, and we just very slowly stop paying attention to ourselves. And then when you don't do that, then you absolutely don't know what path you should be following. It's not possible, because you don't know you.
You don't know you. And that's really what this whole process is about, is really getting to the core of who you are. Because I believe where you're trying to go, you know, we say like elevation and stepping into a new version of yourself, but it's really the version of you that already exists.
That part.
She's already there. He's already there. They're already there within you. But it's just going through the layers of all the conditioning that you've experienced in your specific life to believe that it's okay to be that version of yourself, usually who you were as a child. I always say whatever you were doing as a child, there's probably a connection there to who you're meant to be, but feeling free to be that version, feeling safe to be that version, that is a journey. And so I wanted to answer one of the questions you asked me earlier about what was it like to launch the podcast. I had a whole breakdown. I had a whole breakdown of like, who am I? Who's going to listen to this? Going back to like, I have to hear my own voice, which I've gotten through that. But I was sitting on podcast recordings for 2 years before I launched it. And I kept being shown the same vision because I would be shown what I'm supposed to be doing, and then I would go do something else that I thought would make me more money. And I would ignore this on the side because I'm like, well, who's going to pay for that? And like, are people going to understand? And how am I going to explain it? And just all these beliefs about it. And then I'll have a dream, or I'll lose a client, or something will happen where now I have the space to lean into that. And that's where my current transition comes in, because full transparency, I have not been working with clients. And that was a very devastating experience because I had to grieve the loss of my old business. But I also had to remember that it's just time. Yeah. We're in a time, like you said, of alignment where I feel anything that you're not supposed to be doing or anything that's not meant for you, it just cannot exist anymore. And so I know that, but experiencing that, you have to give yourself time to process and really grieve old versions of yourself too that got you to this point. And so that
got you to this point, because it's like the
thank
grief.
Them.
Ooh.
Yes, there's some grief that comes with it. And I also don't want to make this whole experience sound negative, because it's not, but I am passionate about sharing the realities of the full experience, because
my mic is connected.
She's stuck to her sweater.
Don't edit this out. Oh, I got it. No, I don't. There we go. I got it. Okay. Yay. She's an AV pro too.
Sorry. It's okay. But I think it's really important to share both sides, because a lot of times we hear like love and light and peace, and even listening to my voice, you said it sounds very calm, but there's also a not so pretty side. There is anger and a lot of other emotions, and I don't even want to label them as negative, because I think in the full human experience, to be human is to embrace all of the emotions, sadness, anger, happiness, excitement, joy, they all go together. And I think are a big part of the alignment journey and necessary too. So I'm now learning to accept all of those feelings. And in the past, it'd be like, okay, you don't have clients right now. Like, what are you going to do? What are you going to sell? And it's like, God's like, no, just stop, just sit. So right now I'm learning how to receive and how to be present in the moment and truly lean into this new direction without doubting it. And that has been one of the hardest things ever to do, because it requires 1,000% full faith of something that you can't see where it's going to take you yet. And for my human design specifically, I'm a manifester, which means we're usually doing something or creating something that doesn't exist on a large level. So there's really not anyone to look to say, how do I do this? And that's scary when it's like, I don't know, I'm figuring it out as I go. So that process was like, what is happening? I'm freaking out. I'm so used to being able to like have this strategy and this plan and market it in my business. What does it look like now where I have to feel through what I'm doing and not think about the strategy of it?
And I would argue that it's actually not that we're embarking on something that we can't see, because we actually already know, if we're being honest, it's something we can't control.
That's true. Woo! Yes.
Something we can't control.
That is it.
And
that is it.
The people that are in this room that are watching and hearing are people who we want to control. What we doing? How we doing it? No, this,
Yes.
And the let go part, the control is possibly keeping us from what's for us.
Yes. That is what I'm learning. I'm like, you have control issues in terms of creating the life that you want. I want to be able to control it. I'm like, here's my vision. Okay, what's the plan? I want it to happen now. And, I say God, but whoever you believe in or whatever you believe in, it doesn't matter. That's not necessarily how it works. There does come a point where you have to let go and release and just learn to flow and receive. And I hadn't realized I hadn't been in that energy, that I'd been operating my business more so in survival mode based on what I thought I needed to bring in to get to where I'm trying to go. We always focus on the money, and that's not the only way to get where you're trying to go. There's so many other elements to it. And when you just focus on the revenue, and this is what I teach, but doing it for yourself is very different. And integration is much different than, there's integration, there's application, all of that. And knowing something is very different than integrating it and experiencing it, especially for yourself. But in that process, it just really requires you. There's a time where you have to let go and trust and create, or sometimes not create, just be and let it come to you, which can feel very counterintuitive and scary when maybe you're not making money from it just yet, but having faith that it's going to come. Because it always does. But what can happen when you're in survival mode, which is what I did, I look back as I document my life. I've been journaling since I was 8, and I even go back and read my journals from that time. And it's really fascinating to see how many times I've come to this point and then sabotaged it.
So when I realized I was operating in survival mode and living my life in a way that was out of alignment with where I was trying to go, because when you're operating in survival mode, you don't even realize sometimes how far off your own path you've gone. You think that you're doing all the things because you are busy, but busy doesn't always mean you are heading in the right direction. We can be busy, but staying in the same place. And so I was on this personal development journey. I really believe that being an entrepreneur is the same as like a personal development exercise. And so once I realized that, I had to go on this journey of understanding how I got there, why I believed certain things. And I had to go on that path to address every part of me that wasn't aligned with who I was trying to be. And that required me to have conversations with family members, with friends, past clients, change my business, let a lot of things go, but also start learning how to accept new things into my life. And so I think many of us are living in that survival mode. We don't know, and we don't know how to get out of it. And so when I recognized those loops in my own life, I took time to just start going down that healing path of understanding, what type of therapy do I need? What do I need to learn to really step into this new version of myself and go down that path and work through that fear? And I think that when you start heading down your own path, you'll know what you need to do specifically, but it all starts with you. And like you said earlier, it's already there. It's just a matter of taking the time to dig deep and start putting the pieces together. And
I think we know. I think we know in our soul what's right and what, like, the gut is the feeling is positively the right feeling, the correct, the true feeling. And we just have to pay attention. And it's not like knowing every step 10 steps ahead of time. No, just one. Just one, and just like feel your way through it and find a guide, find that person or whatever. Like, be intentional about that. We're intentional about everything else, making sure our kids get to school, making sure they eat, making sure the laundry list of things that we check for everything else is solid. And then again, tapping in. So Tiffany will be back for another episode.
Yes.
Because also when we had our session, we literally sat in a room for 6 hours and then sat by the elevator and talked for another hour plus. So we could go on, so much and, on and on and on. But you guys, that's it for this episode. It's always an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and everything happens the way it's supposed to happen. I believe that. I know that. If you have yet to take some time out, I challenge you today to take 5 minutes of sitting in peaceful quietness and just accepting and hearing what comes to you. And if you want to take it a step further, write it down. That's it. Do that and let me know how it works out. Shoot me a DM. Reach out to Tiffany. All of her links and her connection points, the link to her show, Alignment Recess, everything is in the show notes. Always so thankful to be here for another episode. We will see you on Friday. Have an amazing weekend. Bye. All right, now, y'all, don't forget to connect with Shades of Content on Instagram @Shades of Content and with me, Patrice Camo, @Patrice Camo. And also be sure to rate this show, leave a review, and subscribe, because that's actually the only way that we're going to grow. I'll see you next week.